Okay, welcome everyone. My name is John Brown. I'm really happy that you're here for our kickoff of the 2025 Healthy Soil Week. And I'm a member of Northern Plains, a member of Sleeping Giant Citizens Council, which is an affiliate of Northern Plains Resource Council. And our mission is to organize Montanans to protect our water, land, air, and working landscapes. We support a healthy, localized, and sustainable economy in farm and ranch country and in our towns and communities, and build strong grassroots leaders, always considering the next generation. Part of our collective work since we started in the 70s has been focused on supporting family farms and ranches. Specifically pertaining to this evening's event is our work in championing Montana's Soil Health Week. Our members realized that more investment in soil health, both for our own organization and from our state's leaders, is a key action and solution to measures in our work of supporting sustainable agriculture. That led us to running a bill in the 2023 legislative session sponsored by Senator Gillespie and Senator Ellis. This established a statewide celebration of soil health, which stands to raise the importance of soil conservation while honoring Montana's agricultural producers and land stewards. It's an opportunity to celebrate the importance of agriculture in Montana's culture, history, and economy. Healthy soils are a win-win for Montana. They increase the bottom line for our farmers and ranchers while making our environment and working landscape more resilient. Soil is the foundation of Montana's most important industry and, in fact, our whole life. Agriculture, healthy soils create greater yields that require fewer costly inputs, helping ensure that agriculture can continue to be an economic driver in Montana for generations to come. Every year, during the first week of April, we celebrate Montana Soil Health Week. You can visit our website to learn more about this effort, and please sign in if you've not done so yet, so that we can share resources with you after the event. And just as a note, no, I'm not replacing Gabe Brown, Max, and we aren't even related, although we have the same last name. I'd like to be related to him, related in heart. So yeah, thanks so much everyone for joining us in this kickoff event of the second annual Montana Soil Health Week.
All right, thank you for that wonderful introduction, John. John's been a soil champion for probably longer than I've been around, and has really helped get this effort off the ground and running. So hi everyone, I'm Gusty. I'm a community organizer with Northern Plains Resource Council, and grew up going to a ranch out in eastern Montana every summer. So just, yeah, this work has a special place in my heart. I am just here to introduce you all to sort of the flow of this event, just make sure everyone hears from me what we're up to tonight. And so I'm really excited we will be able to have a dialogue with not only author and soil health enthusiast Liz Carlisle, but as well as Bob Quinn, who has the Quinn Institute up in northwestern Montana. We'll introduce these speakers in more detail, as well as our other panelists later on in the evening. But anyways, we'll hear a dialogue from Liz and Bob, and Robin will hop into that from Abundant, Montana. And then after that dialogue and that Q&A, where participants can really have an opportunity to ask our wonderful panelists questions, then we'll hear from some of our Montana agency folks. So Maddie and Keela and Connie, who are on tonight, will share more about their work on soil health here in Montana. And then we'll hear a message from Gabe Brown. So we'll hear that message later on in the agenda too. So that's our run of show for this evening. I just wanted to say this is really the kickoff or the launch event for Montana Soil Health Week. And so there's a lot of programming throughout the week going on statewide. So please check out our website or find an event happening nearby you, see what your conservation district is up to, what your folks in your community are doing for Soil Health Week. And for now, just get comfortable and grab your favorite beverage and let's get started. So with that said, I am really thrilled to introduce some of our esteemed guests this evening. We've got Liz Carlisle, who's an associate professor of environmental studies at UC Santa Barbara. She teaches courses on food and farming, but she was born and raised in Montana and was hooked on agriculture while she was working as an aide for the organic farmer and U.S. Senator John Tester. This led to, decades of research and writing collaborations, and she has written 3 books about regenerative farming and agroecology. We've also got Bob Quinn on the call, as I mentioned. He's the co-founder in this of Commute International Wheat. He is from Big Sandy. So these two will introduce themselves further, but we really are honored to have you here with us tonight and just to be celebrating the 2nd annual Soil Health Week with you. I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Liz now, but I just want to start us off with a prompt for you both. Why might we want to put an emphasis on soil health and why does soil health matter to you both?
Yeah, thanks so much, Gusty. It's really great to be here. It's great to see so many friends here on the panel and also in the chat. And I just want to say thank you to everybody joining for the good work that you are doing to steward soil health on your own operations, in your own organizations, through resource conservation districts and conservation boards. It's really an honor to be with you all here. And especially with one of my favorite collaborators, Bob Quinn. Such a privilege to get to work with you on your book, Grain by Grain. We've gotten to have a lot of great conversations about this topic over the years, but it's been a little while. It's good to catch up. I'm curious to hear what you're thinking about these days, and especially as you've launched the Quinn Institute and you've got all these exciting activities from research to education to demonstration going on. And you have really deep roots in Montana and this strong commitment to making rural livelihoods viable for future generations in our state. So I guess I'll just layer on to Gusty's question by saying, why do you see soil health as important when we're thinking about a prosperous future for rural Montana?
Well, I think soil health is really the where it all starts. So that's why I think it's so important. And I would also like to express my appreciation for everybody that's here and for all the work that's gone into this, and Gussie, all your work and your staff and your helpers, and John, of course. And it's just a privilege to be among such dedicated and enthusiastic folks. I really appreciate that. And Liz, I really miss our association that we had quite close while we were writing a book together. That was an amazing feat. I tell my friends that I tried to write a book for 5 years and got together with Liz, and she was able to do it in 5 months what I couldn't do in 5 years. So I'll always be indebted and appreciate that. But and you mentioned about our roots. So my great grandparents came to Montana in 1919. They showed up in Big Sandy a little after the homestead era. Most of the homesteaders were going broke by then, unfortunately. It was a tough go, and my grandfather came. Grandpa Quinn came in 1920. Started our farm in 1920, and gosh, survived the Depression eras, the Dust Bowl, all those things. And then my father came back to the farm in 48. And I remember growing up there with him, of course, and my mom is taking care of the farm. And I never saw the Dust Bowl, of course, but I saw the efforts my dad made in making strips across big fields. and all the work he did to cut up all of our fields into narrow strips to reduce and prevent wind erosion, which was always a factor. And one day my sister came out as they were putting out flags, and she collected all the flags that they were putting up behind them that they didn't notice until she got to the end of the field with a big bouquet and proudly gave them to my dad, and that was not what he was expecting either. But I was introduced to soil conservation and really the importance of soil early on. As far as the soil having life and being really the focus of health, that's really a more recent discovery that I've made. I was brought up in a traditional way and going to traditional schools where we were focusing on feeding the plants. And now I'm completely reversed on that and feeding the soil. And our institute is all focusing on healing the earth by growing food as medicine. And if we can help the soil be healthy and really vibrant, then they will produce healthy plants. And those healthy plants, if we don't destroy them in over-processing and that kind of stuff, we get to the table with as much nutrition as they left the field with, then we will be healthy. And so to me, it's the basis of life, Liz, and I think it's hardly anything you can say is more fundamental or a better place to start than our soil.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think a really important theme in our conversations and in the book that we worked on together, and something that I think is really admirable about the soil health movement in Montana, is how very different people can come together to advance this common goal of taking care of land and soil. And I wonder, I'm putting you on the spot a little bit here, but I wonder if you could share a story from your experience about how you've seen this work around soil health bring together Montanans from different backgrounds to achieve common goals, or if you just have kind of some reflection on that, because it seems like that's an important part of what you all are doing at the Quinn Institute.
Well, thank you, Liz. I think that's really important. And of course, I was brought up in Farm Bureau and quite a conservative family. And in the early days, particularly in the early days, when I was in California, the organic movement is what I kind of joined into, was really all hippies, and they had very little in common with me other than what we were doing on our farm. And when I moved back to Montana and really was trying to figure out how to make the farm go, on 2,400 acres, it was big enough for one family, but not for two, and that's what we had now, suddenly two families on our farm. How are we going to support that? And we got into adding value to our crops by direct sales to bakers in California. All of a sudden, they wanted organic grain. I had no idea what that even was. I didn't even believe in that stuff. But I didn't want to not satisfy my customer, my biggest customer. But it opened, so I went looking, and I found a bunch of organic farmers that I had no idea existed even, and they were not of the same political persuasion. But you know what? It didn't really make any difference. We had so much more in common than we had what divided us. That's what was the fun part of it. And I started to go to their meetings, and they told me stories of how they could grow their own fertilizers, of how they could walk over their fields and feel more tilth and a softer soil. They told me how they could eliminate the use of chemical herbicides and pesticides by rotations. And Liz, I was so excited about that. You know, I didn't. And none of the Montana farmers had long hair like I left in California. But you know, we were not. There's many things we disagreed upon, but that never made any difference because we were so excited about what we did agree upon. And that was what we focused on, and that made all the difference.
I have often lamented that I was born too late to witness you staying in a teepee at Lifeline Farms back in the day. That was one of the stories.
Yeah, that was quite different from what I was raised with. That's right. Oh, dear.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I couldn't agree more. I've been so excited to get to learn from so many brilliant Montana farmers who I think really folks in the state have been leaders in the soil health movement. And, knowing about the importance of it from an environmental standpoint, but also for future generations of farmers in this state, for these livelihoods to continue to be viable. But also, I think there's this kind of deeper life lesson in getting to participate in something like this, where we all pitch in for something that we all benefit from, not just in this generation, but in future generations. And yeah, it's just been so rewarding to get to be part of something larger and something that's so positive. So yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And there might be people here who've been doing this for decades. There might be people on this call who are new to this work. And so I wanted to ask you, how do you think we can move this work forward? And one question I'm curious about is, how do you talk with your neighbors, your community, folks, I don't know, friends and family around this topic of soil health? That's one question about moving this work forward, is just how do we bring these conversations to folks who maybe haven't been in them before, or maybe do think like, oh, that's for people who belong to a different, political or social community. But also, what actions can we take collaboratively in support of better regional soil health?
Well, that's a really good question, Liz. I think that the one thing that I've done is I don't really ask those questions directly anymore. I don't start out by talking about soil health. I start about, one of the projects we did this fall with our institute was I do a lot of things with dryland vegetables. So we have dryland potatoes. And we invited out the grade school from Big Sandy Grade School to watch the potato harvest. And not only to watch it, but to participate in it. And so I had some friends from Gray Cliff down on the Yellowstone bring up their team of horses with a potato digger, and the kids got to watch the potatoes being popped right out of the ground with this team of horses which they loved and a potato digger. And then after they were done watching that, they all went out in the rows that had been dug and filled crates that were placed out there. And so they were really harvesting the potatoes, which then ended up in the school lunch program on their plate. And so this is what one of the things we're really trying to make the connection. So rather than preach about soil health, you might say, we were living soil health. And I got to tell them about the importance of growing healthy potatoes and how we do that with healthy soils and living soils and soils that provide nutrition. Because, and we talk all the time about, our main focus is not greater yields and cheaper food. Because our focus is on more nutritious and higher value food that can really heal us, and start with the youth. I mean, that's where we start, and we end with the other end of the spectrum, which I'm getting closer and closer to, and actually a part of now, and make the end of life also pleasant with good health. I mean, we don't have to be sick all the time. And this is really common ground, I think, is health, and no one can argue about that. We have the most abundant food supply and the cheapest food supply in the whole world, but we have the sickest population, and everybody. I mean, no one's denying that anymore. And we have the answer to that with focusing first on soil health, starting with the right seeds, good seeds that have high potential for nutrition, putting them in healthy soils, and then harvesting at peak nutrition, not green so you can ship them clear across the world or the country, but harvesting at peak nutrition, minimally processing them so we don't process them to death, and we don't need to add sugar and salt to the point that that's all you can taste, because the food doesn't taste any good. Our food tastes good, and so we want to preserve that, and then have as much regional and local production and eating as possible. That's where I like to talk about it. And I'm not against international trade. And of course we grow more wheat in Montana than we can eat. But for heaven's sakes, let's at least feed our own population with what we grow before we are focusing on shipping it across the ocean all the time. So that's kind of the direction I go with my discussions, and I kind of slip in soil health when I can. And it's very natural in a context like that, I think.
Yes, yeah, you're getting a lot of love in the chat here. So I think you have some agreement here on this webinar.
Well, thank you.
I wanted to ask you one more question because I think, there might be some folks on here who are new to some of these soil health practices or who maybe are working with folks who are new to them. And I know from your own experience that sometimes that can be a big transition, moving into more regenerative or organic practices. And so what would you say to folks who are just getting started with a transition like this? What would your advice be about approaching that transition?
Well, if they're a farmer, I would say go visit your closest neighbor that's doing this already. Go to the field days that they hold. Go to state meetings. We have in Montana the Montana Organic Association. We have ARO meetings that are held every winter. That's where you can go and learn. Liz, that was where I got excited about it, going to these meetings and meeting these new people that actually were thinking a whole different way. And we're enthused about it and excited to share with you. That's the other thing that you'll find, those of you that are new, you'll find most people doing this are just more than happy to answer your questions, to encourage you, to say, try this or that, or don't get discouraged, as things go wrong. The other advice I had, don't change over the whole place the first year. Start small and build on your successes. Don't try to go out and and change the world as a sense, your world, your corner of it, your farm, all in once. That's quite risky. And we've had lots of wrecks, but they've been little wrecks because we have they're little projects, and so some things we didn't really adopt until we saw that they actually worked and actually were successful. And others that didn't work, well, we cast them off before they were really a showstopper for us. And so that's the other thing I would advise people, those two things, that see what else is going on that's been successful, and then start reasonable. Start small and reasonable, and then build on your successes. And have fun. You'll have fun with this. I guarantee it. You'll have fun. And that was the other thing that was the most exciting thing to me when I started my conversion. It was all of a sudden farming was fun again. It was a challenge, and it was just like a big chess game. Every year was different, and the goal was this: make it, figure out what you were doing. And one really important portion of that is diversity. If you just have one crop and something goes wrong, like a hailstorm or whatever, it's the whole farm. The whole farm is lost that year. Even if you have insurance and all this other stuff, it's still a loss. But if you have great diversity, I mean, we have a 9-year crop rotation. We have 9 different crops, 5 different cash crops usually we're depending on. They're all at different stages. They all have different needs. They all have different advantages and disadvantages. And with the crazy weather we have now, I mean, normal. When was the last time we had a normal year? I think there was a normal year maybe in 55 or something. I don't remember. Anyway, nothing is normal anymore. And so some things are going to do okay, some things are going to do great, and some things are going to do terrible almost every year if you have enough diversity. But if you have enough diversity, the average will be enough to float your boat, and you'll be okay in your farm operation.
Such sound advice. I could talk to you about this all day, but I think it's time for us to hand off to Gusty. So thank you so much, Bob.
Thank you, folks, and thanks for being part of this. This is a great thing to think about and a great thing to have every year. And thanks for inviting me in. It's great to see you again, Liz.
Well, don't go anywhere. We're just getting started, but thank you for handing it back over. We do have Robin with us from Abundant Montana, and just to add even more diversity to the conversation, she's here just to share a little bit about a local food effort happening here in Montana. So Robin, if you just will share a little bit about that with us, and then we'll hop into our Q&A.
You bet. Hi, everyone. Thank you, Gusty. Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Liz. Thank you, John. Everybody, Northern Plains, for existing and doing all the amazing work you do. So we are Abundant Montana, formerly known as ARO, Alternative Energy Resources Organization. And I've been asked to give people an update on an initiative called 33 by 33 for Montana. And this is a bold goal to get 33% Montana-grown food on all Montana plates by 2033. It's developing a structure, it's an intention, it's a vision. We being Arrow and Abundant, have held 3 global listening sessions over the last 18 months around the state. Very strong interest from enterprises and public agencies and nonprofit organizations and food access producers. Everybody you can think of, as you can imagine, is interested in this because, in case you didn't know, up until 1950, Montana produced 70% of its own food supply, and today we own 3%. That means we import 97% of our food, which means we are completely at the mercy of impacts to that vulnerable global supply chain, whether the food's coming from another state, say perhaps California, where there are fires and droughts and things of that nature, or other countries. And then, we are going to be at the impact of the abruptness of the changes being made at the federal level. They are just going to impact our ability to feed ourselves. And Abundant Montana has dedicated its efforts moving forward to trying to mitigate the impacts of disruption to our Montana food supply. And 33 by 33 is an initiative to invite collaboration by everybody in the state, whether you're a family member buying your food or someone who wants to get into backyard growing or a nonprofit organization, food hub, producer, whomever, school, everybody needs to get involved in this. But what can we do together to resolve the pinch points at the production, processing, and distribution levels that currently demand that we import so much of our food? So that's a broad overview. I know it's broad. The goal is that with time, and we are starting to develop infrastructure that will allow people to engage and collaborate. And I want to just bring up 3 points. And if you want more information, just send me an email, robin@abundantmontana.com, and I'll send you our latest update. We have a global folder with all the goal is to leverage and stand on the shoulders of all the work that's been done by so many people and organizations around the state for the last 25 years, one generation. So we're just taking it to the next level, and we are working together so that people aren't unintentionally siloed. It's the collaboration that's going to allow us to solve the barriers that currently exist. So 3 things very briefly. One is we are taking the lead in bringing people together to host the 2026 Governor's Summit on Local Food and Agriculture. This will be the 3rd time this event has happened in the state. It happened in 2007 and 2016, both of them hosted by Grow Montana Food Policy Coalition, and my hope is that they will take the lead again. We've just gotten an initial vote of confidence from the Department of Agriculture's new director, Jillian Straight, and the governor's office. So fingers crossed. But that is going to be an extraordinary way for everybody who has any interest in sustainably feeding Montana for future generations to come together and let's figure this out. Let's develop the plan for 2033. We ourselves at Abundant are working with 4 other enterprises to develop a pilot program for getting 33% Montana-grown food on school meal plates by 2033. That's in process. We're very excited about it. The federal funding is falling apart before our eyes, but we're putting together a business plan to take to a consortium of foundations who are interested in supporting it. So we'll see where that goes. We are also starting a conversation on April 15th at 2 o'clock, inviting anybody who is getting federal funding to get on a call with us so we can start to look ahead and plan ahead on how we continue forward with this project of getting Montana food on Montana plates without federal funds. We just got to figure it out. We can do it. And there was something else, and I can't think what it is.
And Robin,
does that give you a good oversight?
you did cut in and out just a bit earlier when you shared the statistic of local food, in 1950 versus now. If you wouldn't mind just
Oh, not at
repeating
all. That usually stops the room. So up until 1950, Montana produced 70% of its own food supply. Today, we produce 3%. That means we import 97% of our food. And we are at the mercy of impacts to that supply chain to feed ourselves.
Well, and I think, we can show and tell with this, and that number is impactful, I must say. Well, to keep us on time here, I'm going to move us on into our Q&A, and we'll put instructions into the chat, but I want to direct folks to click the Q&A symbol or the Q&A button on their Zooms, and then you can go ahead and just put questions into the Q&A for our speakers. While folks are migrating over, starting to add questions to our Q&A, I'll just start us off. And I would just like to ask, Liz and Bob, how are you feeling about the big picture of working lands in our region? That's a big question, but I just am curious of, you've been doing this work for some time, and yeah, what do you think about the big picture of working lands in our region?
When you say working lands, are you talking about, what are you talking about? Are you talking about farming and ranching?
Our working lands.
Okay,
yeah,
producing food, right? That we're talking about. Okay, great. I just want to make sure. Well, I think that Robin and I are really on the same train, on the same track with this grow your own food. I've been trying to. That's the way I was raised. When I was raised, and all the community was the same. Everybody had chickens, everybody had pigs, everybody had a milk cow, everybody had a garden, and that's how we lived. Now, if you look at the farm, even the ranch scene too, very few have any of those things. There might be a small garden from here and there, but most of them have none of those. I think I'm very optimistic about the future, but I think that where we should really start more is in the school system. I love the school garden programs where kids actually learn how to grow their own food and eat their own food. They take those ideas home and they encourage their folks to do it. I had several folks come up to me, and after the potato experience, I said, we can't get our kids to go out and help with anything in the yard, and here they're out having fun at your place, working in the potato field. And I think, well, why can't it be fun? Why can't it could be fun? And I think that's a missing piece. But I think there's more and more interest. The thing that I think was a big change that I had never seen, and most people in this country had ever seen, during the middle of COVID, when grocery shelves went empty. Not all of them, but some of them. And in Big Sandy, we didn't have the flour shelf was empty. We live in the middle of the Golden Triangle in Montana, where there's more wheat produced, county by county than almost any place else, and yet we had no flour to eat. For heaven's sakes, that is a real big disconnect, and I think that there's some big interest to fix that and work on that. We've been working a lot with the Rocky Boy Reservation, which is right close to us, and this year we have a project of helping them plant a pizza. So last week we had a big group. We were showing folks how to plant tomato starts and basils and peppers, and friends of mine said, "Oh, we might have 80 or so show up." 80 showed up, and no, might have 20. That's what they said. They might have 20 maybe show up. 80 people showed up, and everybody had a great time. And so we're going to do this every month and help people with their gardens and how month by month the different things we do. I think that the more that we can do this kind of stuff and share from people that have experience with those that don't, that's how we pass on information in the best way and in the easiest way. And so that's the kind of thing that I think we should look at.
Yeah, I like that. I think we have a question in the chat that a lot of folks want to know, Montana can be windy, it can be dry. What tips and tricks can you offer to improve soil? Just maybe this is a question about, water retention too.
Well, I don't want to dominate. Any of you guys have an opinion about that? I tell you what, the climate change, this is a real thing going on. What we're seeing, as I mentioned earlier, there's hardly any normals anywhere. Last week, for those of you in Montana, last week was the most beautiful spring days on Wednesday and Thursday we could imagine. It was gorgeous, and Friday was snowing, and today it's snowing. So anyway, we have that kind of thing going on. But generally, one of the things we're trying to do on our institute is focus on developing more fall-seeded crops out of spring-seeded crops. So we're looking at safflower, we're looking at kamut even, we're looking at different pulses that are normally planted in the spring that could be, if we research enough and study them enough and try to figure out how to do it, we could try to plant more in the fall, because the fact is that the rains are ending sooner and it's getting hotter sooner. And that is a real problem in dryland for spring-seeded crops. They're more and more risky. But we need more diversity. I hate to see us just do winter wheat and say that's the only thing we can do. We really need a lot of diversity, but let's look for things that can do better on less. And we just have to be imaginative and experiment and search the seed banks. We're working on a project now. We started with 100 different seed sessions looking for hard white winter wheat, which is kind of unusual. But we found one out of 100 that looks really, really promising. It's a little bit like a needle in a haystack. But if we don't look, we won't find anything. And if you just plant a bunch of different things out there, something's going to survive. And that's what we should focus on, trying to start saving our own seed and adapting them more to what we have right now.
Well, I think a lot of that could just map onto another question in the chat. So we've talked about, a larger, maybe ranch type operation. What about any advice for building soil, starting soil health in a greenhouse setting? And I know Keela's working on an answer there too, but for Liz and Bob and Robin, what about a greenhouse setting?
Well, the great thing about a greenhouse is it's small. That means you can do things that you can't do with 1,000 acres, and it makes perfect sense. And compost is the first thing that comes to my mind. We throw away way too much to the garbage. We could make compost out of all of our house scraps, out of our leaves, our lawn clippings, our weed piles, all kinds of stuff. If there's animals close by, throw some manure in there. It's not hard if you're doing small amounts, and small amounts is all you need for a greenhouse. And that's what I would encourage you to do. And again, if you don't know anything about it or where to start, you can go online, but it's more fun to go to the neighbors that are actually doing it or people that are doing it and get acquainted and share success stories and fun ideas. I think we've lost too much of that with too much focus on just solving everything online. I think that I'd really like to encourage people to meet their neighbors again and find out who is doing things that really is successful, and you can work together. Almost every community, I guarantee you, every community in Montana has somebody that's doing compost. They may be the only one in town, and that's fine, but find them. And if you want to do that, that's what I would suggest, starting at that level.
Yeah. Anything to add, Liz or Robin?
I'll just add that there are a number of folks across the state who have explored and built what are called geothermal greenhouses that are attractive for a couple reasons. One is that these are soil-based greenhouses, so you can always be planting in the ground, and they're using geothermal means to keep the soil warm enough so that it doesn't freeze. And you have to deal with the fact that up here in Montana, the latitude and low light will impact growing in the high season in the high winter months, but nonetheless, you can grow quite a bit, cold season greens and fruit trees that are adapted to cold climates and things like that. And so it's quite attractive for those reasons. And to Bob's point, if you're growing in the soil, you can it's much easier to develop nutrient dense context for providing nutrient dense plants and the food that we eat. And we at Abundant are helping the community of Fort Belknap build a geothermal greenhouse this spring. And most importantly about that is that we are actually hiring a team to help put together a build manual, so that other people can figure out how to build these easily in their own communities. They're a little tricky to build without such a common plan and manual. And we'll be doing a lot of videos, and I don't know, people smarter than me are going to put it together so it makes sense to construction people. But hopefully once that's done, which will be by the end of this summer, there'll be a resource available to everybody for free to help build these types of greenhouses in their own communities.
That was a great addition, Robin. And yeah, thank you all so much for your time. I wish we had even more time for questions. If there are questions that aren't answered, we're trying to record those, and we will make sure to share, panelist information and resources after this event as well. And I can't wait to see what the three of you do next, what all of our organizations together do next. I think it's been good to get a little snapshot of that tonight, but yeah, like I said, I can't wait to see what's next. So big round of virtual applause for these first round of folks. And I'm now just going to hand it over to Montana Association of Conservation Districts Engagement Coordinator, Maddie, and she'll introduce our next speaker. Thank you.
Hi, thanks, Gusty. Like Gusty said, my name is Maddie, and I'm here with the Montana Association of Conservation Districts. Our mission is to support all of Montana's 58 districts and the important work they do to protect our natural resources and to champion locally led conservation solutions. Soil health is central to the work that we do, and it's really been a privilege for MACD to be involved with soil health initiatives like the Soil Health Symposium, Soil Health Week, and maintaining the conservation menu to help connect both landowners and organizations doing conservation work with funding opportunities. Districts are made up of local leaders in conservation, and our next speaker, Connie French, is a perfect example of that. Connie was the administrator for the Phillips Conservation District for many years, and her husband, Craig, is an associate supervisor. And as producers, they've also been very engaged with soil health initiatives and partnerships. Just a few examples are that they are longtime members of the Ranch Stewards Alliance. They received the Leopold Award in 2020, and they were speakers at the 2024 Soil Health Symposium. And on their own operation, they've also introduced a number of regenerative practices to help improve soil health. So with that, I will hand it over to Connie.
Thank you, Maddie. And thank you, everyone, for being here. This has been such an honor and a privilege to just sit in and listen on this conversation and be a part of this. I'm so impressed with everyone here tonight and so thankful to be here. I was going to start with our kind of a little bit of our journey. We worked for my mother and father-in-law for years and started becoming more aware of soil health when we went to an NRCS workshop with Justin Morris, and it was a grazing workshop, and we literally got sick to our stomach, my husband and I, because we realized that what we were doing to the range and the soils was not good. So we started getting more interested and looking for more resources to learn how to take better care of our soil. And we got involved with organizations, started looking for places to find more information and more teaching. And those resources were abundant. And that was probably 10 years ago, and they have just become more abundant now. I was going to mention, Maddie, my father-in-law also was a conservation district supervisor for over 60 years. So he might hold the record for the longest conservation district supervisor. But anyway, that was one of the places we looked, and the conservation districts, the NRCS office, let's see, RSA, of course, Rancher Stewardship Alliance, and there's so many other groups, Northern Great Plains, there's so many groups out there that you can tap into and build that community and get into that community. And like I think Bob mentioned earlier, once we started down this journey towards looking into our soil health and trying to improve that and learn more about it, the community was incredibly welcoming. We went to workshops all over the state. We went to schools, classes, webinars, seminars, anything we could find, books to read. I haven't read your book yet, Liz, but I will. It's on my list now. And everyone was so welcoming. There was no sense of competition. It was more of just everybody wants to teach anybody else as much as they possibly can. So I would highly encourage anyone who's on this webinar who is just getting started to just reach out and get engaged with other folks. We've worked with so many different partners in our soil health journey. RSA, ACES, Western Sustainability Exchange, Ducks Unlimited, World Wildlife Fund, the Nature Conservancy. I mean, groups, you guys were talking earlier about diversity as well. Groups that at one point in time, we probably thought of as adversaries to the ranching industry. And now they've become our allies. So it's really, as you work with those partnerships, you find yourself building relationships with these people. And then those relationships in turn become a community. So you end up building this community around yourself and around this soil health journey. Let's see, one other thing I think I wanted to mention was that, we used to think of ourselves as cattle ranchers. And then we got to thinking, well, no, that's not what we do. We raise grass. We're grass farmers. And then as we've gotten into the soil health, gotten more interested, mainly through the Soil Health Symposium, that was a big impetus for us to really move forward in our journey in soil health. We realized we're not even grass farmers. We are stewards of the soil, and that's that underground herd. That's the foundation of everything. That is how we can improve soil nutrients, the nutrient cycle, the water cycle in particular. And it's foundational to our business and to our life and to our health, but not only that, but to the health of all of our communities, both here at home in Montana and worldwide, I would say, nationwide and worldwide. So I do think it's not just important, it's critical for more people to become more aware of soil health and what it means to our environment and our world. Sounds a little fluffy there, I guess, but I do believe that it is that important, and I don't want to overstate, but it truly is. And again, I would just recommend to folks, go to your local conservation district. They have so many resources that they can help you. They can point you in the right direction, even if they don't have what you're looking for. They can point you in the right direction. The NRCS office, the FSA office, most communities, most small towns have even a stock growers group, Rancher Stewardship Alliance, ACES, that's down in the Winnett area. EMRA is in the eastern part of the state. They're a good one to go to. Western Sustainability Exchange is in the Livingston, Big Timber area. All those groups, and Blackfoot Challenge is another one on the western side of the state. So they're out there, and if you need help finding them, please feel free to give me or any of the other folks you find on a website. You Google soil health, it'll come up. At the Soil Health Symposium, that's a good place to go and network and meet more people too, so that you can get started on this journey, or if you've already started, to grow and to get further. So thanks, guys. Thank you, Maddie.
Yeah, Maddie, anything else to offer up in terms of conservation districts? Resources, we'll definitely follow up with participants afterwards, but yeah, any last thoughts?
No, I think Connie did a great job. Yeah, thank you.
Well, thank you both. We can
Oh.
learn a lot from Connie's journey. Go ahead, Connie.
I have one more thing I forgot to mention. So one of the things that the MACD and the National Association of Conservation Districts does is they recognize folks in different areas that are soil health champions. And we are extremely privileged to have been able to recommend Patty Armbrister out of Hinsdale, an FFA teacher out of Hinsdale, as a soil health champion. And she has become one. So I want to give her a yeah, atta go, Patty. Atta go, yeah, atta girl.
That was a great addition. I'm glad
Yeah.
you thought of that one, Connie. Well, thank you. So next up, we've got Keela Deaton on. She's our NRCS State Soil Health Specialist. We are really so lucky to have Keela here working in Montana. She's incredibly hardworking, great resource for just our state's producers, ranchers and farmers. And so take it away, Keela. I'll hand it over to you.
All right, thanks, Gusty. I'm so impressed everyone's joined this evening. This is a really cool event, and I'm excited to be a part of it. So as Gusty mentioned, I am the State Soil Health Specialist with NRCS for the state of Montana. So I cover the whole state, fourth biggest state in the nation, and I have had a lot of windshield time. But it's been fantastic covering the countryside and seeing the regenerative efforts going on, and Montana should be very proud of their agriculture. So just a little bit of background, and some of you are familiar with NRCS and some are not. But we are the only division of USDA that works on private land. So we're the only division of federal government that works on private land. And Montana NRCS we're really proud to champion and support soil health across the state because it applies to all land uses from crop, range, forest, urban settings, greenhouses. I mean, soil health, like Bob mentioned, and I can't support it anymore, but it ties back to human health, right? So we all are aware of that. But NRCS can offer technical assistance to farmers and ranchers to walk the land with you. We provide education on the principles of soil health. We have the 5 principles of soil health that we try to teach and promote. And then when we're walking the land with you, we can also have conversations about how to initiate soil health on your operation. It's a journey. And I always tell folks that you walk, then you crawl, and then you run when you start your soil health journey. And like Bob mentioned, you're going to make mistakes. You're not the only one. We've all done them. But that's how we learn and we grow. So NRCS has offices in just about every county in the state with local staff, and we can assist you. Or you're also welcome to reach out to me as well. As Gusty mentioned, they're going to share our contact information. Feel free to call me, email me. I'll come out and visit you. If you'd like, we can get together and chat. Happy to answer any questions. And so NRCS, in partnership with MACD, like they've mentioned earlier, we help host the Montana Soil Health Symposium in Billings. If you've not been, I highly suggest that you attend. It's a couple days of phenomenal information. It's kind of like drinking information from a fire hose, but I don't know anyone who has left the symposium not invigorated to go try more soil health principles and practices on their operation. And then we also, part of that soil health symposium is we're also looking for new soil health innovators and professionals to come in and share with us more of what they've learned. I saw that Frank Grenoweg was on the chat, and he was a speaker at our last soil health symposium. That's so cool to see Frank attendant. Frank with his family is on as well. So anyway, so now we're going to talk about, or we're not going to talk, we're going to show you the Gabe Brown video. If you don't know Gabe Brown, it's a pretty popular name, but he's the most popular pioneer in the soil health movement. If you've never heard of him, he's from Bismarck, North Dakota on his 5,000-acre ranch up there, and he focuses on restoring soil and ecological health. And he also has a book out. You can read it, and it talks about the struggles and what kind of in a way forced him into this soil health journey, and how he's never looked back since. And I also have to give kudos to Nicole Martinez. She is our Montana NRCS Public Affairs Specialist, and she traveled to Gabe's ranch to interview him on his thoughts about soil health. And so her video editing skills have resulted in this great short clip of some of Gabe's most personal, intimate comments. And so with that, I will turn it back over to Gusty and Paula to start the video.
I tell people I'm a poor cattleman, even worse farmer, but I can grow some soil. I have the good fortune, I spend a lot of time in Montana, and I see the challenges there. You know, very eastern Montana, parts of northern Montana across the northern tier, brittle environment, semi-brittle environment. Also, one of the challenges that I see in Montana is extreme wind. And that wind, it amazes me the loss of residue from that wind. And of course, one of the soil health principles being armor on the soil, we have to be cognizant of that. And I think that is really a challenge when you combine the two, because it's that armor that provides the right home environment for the biology, and of course it's the biology then that help drive soil aggregation, and it's that soil aggregation that allows water to infiltrate. You know, we can increase biodiversity, increase water holding capacity, and in these brittle environments, moisture is everything. What do farmers do in order to increase yields? Oh, we have to put more on, more synthetics, higher amounts of nitrogen. Carbon-nitrogen ratio, they put on too much nitrogen, that biology is going to consume that nitrogen, then it's going to go looking for carbon. Pretty soon the biology's eating the carbon that's holding that soil aggregates together, those biotic glues. Pretty soon you collapse your soil structure, you can't infiltrate water, you can't hold water, and that is really the lack of understanding of how to build an aggregate, how the water cycle works, how the biological nutrient cycle works. You know, I often tell people, if I go in front of 100 farmers and I ask them how a soil aggregate is built, I would be amazed if I got 3 correct answers out of 100. Yet that little aggregate, that farmer or rancher's profitability depends on that soil aggregate, yet they don't know how one's formed. I really believe in Montana we have to armor the soil first. It really appalls me, quite frankly, how I drive across many areas of Montana and see so much bare soil. And with bare soil, I mean, you're prone to wind erosion, water erosion. There's no home for biology. The process, you know, what moisture is there is going to evaporate away. Soil temps rise, your negative impact on biology. It's just negative cascading effects. For those starting out on a new acreage, the first thing is you have to get to know your context. You have to understand. So often we see producers, they move on a new acreage and they're like, oh, I'm going to cross fence, I'm going to put this up, I'm going to grow these species of plants. Well, do you really know the hydrology of that acreage? Do you know what species you have throughout the year, throughout the seasons? I tell anyone who is going on a new acreage, first thing is put as little infrastructure in as possible, and then watch the animals and watch the species that come in your grazing system. If it's in a cropping system, what weeds do you have coming? You know, where does the water tend to settle? How's your infiltration? Get to know that acreage first, and often that takes several years. Once you have that background context, then you can start adjusting accordingly your management so that you can advance the ecological health of that property. I spend the vast majority of my time helping people transition from quote-unquote conventional agriculture to regenerative agriculture. Although I have to tell you, I think regenerative agriculture really is conventional, because what we call conventional agriculture has really only been around the last 80 years. To transition, the first thing you have to know is, where are my soils at biologically? And that's a total shift in mindset from what the conventional model is. Now, the answer is not applying the bug in a jug. The answer is, how do we adjust our management to accelerate those ecosystem processes? So when we start the producers down this regenerative path, the first thing we do is we recommend a suite of soil tests to understand where they're at. The first one is a TND test, total nutrient digestion. We take that from 0 to 12-inch depth. What that tells us is the total amount, both inorganic and organic fractions of nutrients in the soil. We have tested over 34 million acres now. We have not tested a single acre that cannot have profitable production without added inputs. Now, am I telling people, oh, just remove the inputs? No, don't. You'll have a wreck. What it takes to have profitable production on those acres is biology. So then we do biological tests. We'll do the Haney test from 0 to 6 inches, and we'll do a PLFA test, phospholipid fatty acid. Between those two tests, it'll tell us the inorganic and organic fraction of nutrients. It'll tell us, give us a good indication of the amount of bacteria, protozoa, nematodes, fungal component in the soil. Because in order to run the natural nutrient cycle, we have to understand, okay, we have a lot of prey in the soil with bacteria. We're going to have that in all of our conventional agricultural soils. Now, do we have the predators that can consume those prey and then drive the natural nutrient cycle? Those are the first things we look at. From there, then, what we determine is, and this is according to each individual's farmer's aversion to risk, okay? We tell them, what do you feel comfortable with? And realize some people are risk takers, some aren't. Some people financially feel like they can't afford to take the risk, so they're going to try our recommendations as small as 2 acres. I've had other people where 8,000 acres, first year, all covers, you know. That's their aversion to risk, and financially they could afford it if it didn't work out. But what we do is we do split trials, half according to what they've been doing and their current management, half according to our recommendations. To be honest with you, 95% of farmers today are over-applying synthetics. So we feel very comfortable to start in most cases. You know, now this is on a case-by-case basis, but we'll cut them back, say, 15 to 20% on their synthetics on the other half of that field, and then we'll keep very accurate records as far as inputs and production and then profitability. And what we tell people is we'll take profit over yield any day, because profit can keep you in business. TND test we only take once as a baseline. It's really not going to change. May change a little bit according to where in the field you take that test, but that we only take once. The Haney test, then, starting out, we're going to take that every year, okay? And we're going to take it the same time every year. There's some parameters that need to be adhered to. Soil temps need to be 55 degrees Fahrenheit or above. Here in the Northern Plains, we like to take those samples in early June, mid-June is a good time. The PLFA will take also the first year as a baseline, but then we'll take that every 3rd year because biology is going to change a bit slower. One of the things that I believe is hardest to teach is the power of observation. I think we've lost that in agriculture today. Adaptive grazing, you're observing, okay, what's this land trying to tell me? Have those plants recovered? Am I seeing enough armor cover on the soil surface? What's plant density? Do I need more stock density here, less? Am I rotating seasons of use? Because if you're grazing the same paddock, same time every year, you're unknowingly selecting for species that can tolerate grazing at that time of the year. You know, there's so many things that need to be taken into account. And grazing is really an art. And, you know, there's oftentimes people say, oh, we have to plan out our grazing. Well, that's fine. We can have a rough idea. But I'll guarantee you on day 2, the plan will change, you know? And realize grazing also, adaptive grazing, has to fit a context. Am I sitting here saying on the large ranches of Montana where pastures may be, 1,500, 2,000 acres, 5,000 acres, am I saying, no, you got to divide that up into 100 pastures? No, it has to fit your context. But what I'm telling you is, okay, don't just leave them in there the entire season. How can we get that so they're maybe we're moving them through 4 paddocks instead of just 1? And then once we do that and see the increased production, then maybe it'll be 8. When can we afford to put in some water development? On BLM, Forest Service land, you have to work within that context. So I've seen in Montana changes happen very quickly if weather cooperates. If we get the moisture where we can build that armor on the soil, if we get diversity, and the changes will occur much more quickly if we integrate livestock onto that cropland. In those cropland systems, oftentimes we haven't had the diversity there. Now, we need to get armor. We need to remove the tillage from it, okay? We need to add diversity. Now, in those brittle areas of Montana, there may not be the opportunity after a cash crop harvest to plant a diverse cover crop mix. So that's going to mean, okay, can we find a window of time, increase that window of time where we can add a diverse cover crop? Okay, that's the thing that it's going to take. Change is going to come slower in a cropping system. I have seen it, though, in years with average or above average moisture, we're able to see a shift in biology. Okay, now it will come about much quicker if we're able to integrate animals through adaptive grazing and graze those diverse covers. Then we can see a greater change. You don't have to integrate animals into your cropping system if you don't want to. But make no mistake about it, your soils will never become as healthy and biologically active as they would if you integrate livestock. That's a plain and simple fact, because that's how natural ecosystems function. Now, on our perennial systems, seeing a change in biology, realize most perennial systems already are fairly diverse, okay? They've had animals on them, now maybe not grazed adaptively, but you're not going to see the wide sweeping changes in biology on these perennial systems. When you do increase your management and your adaptive grazing skills, start running animals at a higher stock density, extending the recovery period that those plants have, you'll notice a subtle shift over time, okay? You will, though, early on, notice an increase in production, but that may not equate to a change in those soil tests and in the biology in the soil. If a person wanted to maximize diversity of livestock on their operation, I would say the first thing they need to understand is their own context. What works there? And I'll use our own ranch as an example. For a couple years, we tried to run goats on this ranch. Well, we just don't have the browse for goats. They're out of context with our environment. So we scrapped that. You have to look at what is synergistic with your environment. Now, the beautiful thing across Montana is we certainly know that ruminants work, beef, cattle, and sheep are very complementary to that. And I know a lot of people, they might have this negative connotation of sheep, but to be honest with you, they're really not the challenge that everyone thinks they are. You simply need some good livestock guardian dogs, and then you got to have a really good perimeter fence. And other than that, you can get sheep to work, and they tend to not eat a lot of the same species as do cattle, for instance, so they're very complementary to each other, and you can often run them together. So take a look at that. Also depends on where you're at financially, how large your scale your operation is, etc. One of the biggest challenges we have when we explain regenerative agriculture and start moving a producer down this path is they don't know what their true cost of production is. Farmers and ranchers are very good at producing things, bushels, pounds, they're very good at that. But quite honestly, they're terrible business people. You know, they haul the animals to the sale barn, they haul the grain to the elevator, but they really don't know their true cost of production. They'll show you on a Schedule F, here's how the farm did for the year on paper, but do you really know what your cost, how it varied from malting barley to winter wheat to spring wheat, whatever the cash crop is? Do you really know how much per bushel it cost you to produce those? And are you including all your expenses in there? Your labor, your interest costs, depreciation on equipment, are all those figured in? Chances are not, you know, and quite sadly, it's very difficult then for us to help a farmer ranch if they don't understand that, because how do they know where they're at? On our ranch, we could easily be certified organic if we so chose to pay for that certification, okay? I've been opposed to that for years. Now, the main reason is, why would I pay for something that's not going to provide me a premium, okay? But I changed my mind a bit when I saw the greenwashing that was going on in the regenerative space. A group of people and myself got together and we started Regenified, which is a certification verification company. What it does is it verifies, according to the principles, according to the rule, 6 principles of soil health, 3 rules of adaptive stewardship, 4 ecosystem processes. Those things are constant worldwide wherever there's land-based agriculture. So why not use those as the foundation of a certification and just go out on farms, on ranches? Are those farmers and ranchers adhering to the principles, the rules, the processes? Certify them according to that, so then the consumer can know that's truly from a regenerative farm or ranch. And we're working with the supply chains then, the brands, in order to source those products from these regenerative farms and ranchers, rewarding them for the good work they're doing, telling their story, giving consumers then the confidence that they deserve. There is a lot of different certifications, verifications out there. It becomes very confusing to the consumers, to the brands themselves, to the farmers. Which should I take part in? And what I tell people is, I'm not saying one is better than another. Which one works for you? Which one provides you as a farmer and rancher the authenticity that you feel comfortable with in putting your name, your farmer ranch's name, having that certification attached to your name, your farmer ranch? That's most important to you, along with, hey, is this going to help me make more money? I really think that farming and ranching has received a bad rap. You know, what's the old adage? Farmers and ranchers buy retail, receive wholesale, pay the freight both ways. We can't continue with that. If we're truly producing nutrient-dense foods, we should be rewarded for that. If we're truly enhancing ecosystem function, providing clean air, clean water, holding the nutrients on the landscape rather than in the watersheds, we should be rewarded for that. So I would simply say to farmers and ranchers, which of those certifications, verifications, if any, can help you and in your context? To the consumer, which certification, verification has the honesty, integrity to provide what it says? Which do you feel most comfortable with? That's going to take some homework on everyone's part, but that's not a bad thing. You know, one of the things most rewarding to me is, I've been in this space a long, long time, and I'm getting old, but I tell people I have seen more change the past 3 to 5 years than I did the previous 25 years combined. Change on the farm and ranch, more and more farmers and ranchers knowing, becoming aware, saying, hey, this isn't right. I got to change my management, my stewardship. I've seen more change from the brands, from the companies. Now, some of that's to address ESG concern. So some of them are concerned about climate change. Some are concerned about water. Some truly want to provide nutrient-dense products to their consumers. They want the story that goes with the farm and ranch. But that has exploded the past 3 years. And then I'm seeing a real change from the consumers. You know, one of the things COVID did, it exposed the flaws in the current supply chain. So along with that, consumers became much more aware of what they're consuming. There's some really groundbreaking work going on right now by Dr. Stefan Van Vliet, Dr. Fred Provenza, Dr. Scott Kronberg, that is comparing phytochemical compounds, and that's a good thing. That's phytochemical compounds are the terpenes, the phenols, the alkaloids, all the things that drive our gut microbiome. They're testing food grown in and on regenerative soils, whether it be a grain, a fruit, a vegetable, or a protein, and comparing that to adjacent farms or ranches that are in the conventional mindset. What they're finding is not just a little difference. They're finding a difference in vitamins up to 64%, a difference in the fatty acid profile, the good fatty acids, up to 239% difference, a change in the oxidative stress markers, and the lower the better because that gives you an indication of heart disease, etc. Up to 67% decrease in those oxidative stress markers. Well, this research is groundbreaking, and what it's going to really do, what's going to come out of it, is the ability for us as farmers and ranchers to market our products as preventative medicine. And you look at the healthcare costs in society today, what's going to change that? Nutrient-dense food. The only way, what they're finding out, what these scientists are finding out is the array of and degree of these phytochemical compounds, and they have the ability to identify over 2,300 of them now. What they're finding out is it's directly related to the diversity of the microbiology in the soil, which is directly related to the diversity above ground. Amazing. In other words, the 634. If regenerative agriculture is so good, why isn't everybody doing it? And I tell them that there's several obstacles that are preventing it. Number one, farmers and ranchers cannot implement what they do not know. And unfortunately, we're not teaching those regenerative principles and the 4 ecosystem processes. Farmers aren't learning about them in our land-grant universities. Extension isn't teaching them. You know, the agrochemical industry certainly isn't teaching them. So that's a big obstacle. Another thing that is definitely an obstacle is the fact that agriculture is a very capital-intensive business. And most farmers and ranchers have to borrow money for operating every year. And the lending institutions, they're not going to loan money unless farmers and ranchers are tied into federal crop insurance, revenue insurance. Now, I'm in no way saying that you can't take part in those and go down the regenerative path. That's not true. But what it is doing when farmers are tied to large amounts of operating loan, they feel obligated, hey, I need to grow whichever crops I can insure for the largest return, should something happen, through revenue insurance. So that keeps farmers kind of corralled, siloed in producing just certain crops, whether it be, wheat in the northern plains or corn and beans in most states now, it seems, So that keeps farmers from thinking outside the box, expanding, and going down the regenerative path. And I'd have to say a third thing is simply fear of the unknown. Each of us as individuals has a different aversion to risk, and and you feel that you just can't, because of how highly leveraged you are, you can't afford to, quote unquote, try something new. You know, those who know me know that I have a big mouth. My business partners, friends will always say, you're going to know exactly where Gabe stands because he's going to tell you whether you want to hear it or not. Because of that, I've had a big target on my back, not only because I have a wide, you know what, but I got a big target on me. So I have to have very, very thick skin. You know, but realize I grew up in town. People expected me to fail at farming and ranching. That's what drove me, though. You know, during those 4 years of hail and drought, people were just waiting for me to fail so they could buy this place. There's no way I was going to fail. I wasn't going to let that happen. Now you get a lot of naysayers. You know, throughout the whole journey, I should say, there's been a lot of naysayers. Oh, it'll work there in Bismarck. It won't work here. Now here we are, 34 million acres. We're actively consulting on across North America, England, Ireland, soon expanding into other countries. We'll make an announcement on that coming up. You know, it works everywhere because the principles, rules, processes work everywhere. So what I say to the naysayers is, wherever you're at, I'll make this bet with you. I'll bet our ranch here in North Dakota against your farmer ranch anywhere in the world that I can get it to work there. Okay? I'm willing to do that. And you know what? Sorry, I'm going to own your farmer ranch because the principles, rules, processes work anywhere in the world where there's land-based ecosystems. A farmer ranch cannot be considered regenerative unless it moves to the next generation. That does not necessarily mean it has to be a family member. But unless it's continued, it's truly not regenerative. What I'm most proud of is that our son now runs this ranch. That's the thing I'm most proud of. That and a little bit, I'm a little proud of the soil. Farmers and ranchers become intentional. You know, it amazes me what can happen. I can't tell you how many times I hear, oh, but Gabe, you don't understand. Our soils aren't like that. You don't understand. You know, weather's different, rainfall. I said, I know what your problem is. I said, tonight you go home, walk in that bathroom, look in the mirror, there's your problem. Because the greatest problem on any farmer ranch is right up here. If you don't believe it'll work, you're right. If you believe it will work, you're right. I wouldn't change anything. You know, there was difficult parts of the journey, but without those difficult parts, I wouldn't be sitting here with you today. So, yeah, it's, if I had to do it all over again, would I? Absolutely. Would my wife? Probably not.
I was having trouble hitting my mute button. Well, welcome back, everyone. I hope you enjoyed that that video. A lot to learn there. I need to watch it several more times, I think. I'm just going to go ahead and hand it over to John to wrap us up for this evening.
Thanks, Gusty. Thanks, Liz and Bob and Robin and Maddie and Keela and Connie and Gusty and Paula. So what can we do after this event to continue being involved? And I'll just go through a few suggestions. Oh, and thanks for everybody who showed up on the other side of the screen. All you people who had the great questions and put your attention into this amazing event as we kick off Montana Soil Health Week number 2. So, communities across the state. I loved hearing Gabe talk about things have changed in the last 3 years. That's really encouraging to hear, because sometimes people who have been in it a long time and not seen anything change are discouraged by that. But when we hear that there are things happening, That's great. So anyway, I could go on and on and on about this. We didn't want to let you go, though, without sharing a few ways you can take action. So participate in the what we call the Soil Your Undies Challenge. And you can Google that and find out what that means. It's burying some new cotton underwear in your soil, dig it up 6 weeks later, and see what kind of decomposition it is that has taken over your underwear, and that'll give you a sense of what's going on in your soil. It's a fun way, kids love it, and so then nominate a local agricultural producer for the National Association of Conservation Districts Soil Health Champion Network, which we heard about already, and that Patty Ambrister is our newest member of, which thank you so much, Patty, for doing the work you do to get that kind of recognition. You really absolutely deserve it. And you can help increase the adoption of soil health systems and get Montana ranchers and farmers on the map with this champion program. We would like to see a champion in every county in the state, and then in every more than that. The Conservation District, the National Association of Conservation District Soil Health Champions Network, is SHCN, is made up of more than 300 farmers, ranchers, and woodland owners from across the nation. Then you can join local work groups working on soil conservation in Montana. Here's a good list. If you've not yet, consider becoming a member of Northern Plains. Following our grassroots model, we rely on engagement from everyday people, and people from all types of backgrounds and all corners of the state make up our membership. We'd love to have your support and perspective. Membership can look many different ways, so I like to describe it as a choose your own adventure, depending on how involved you'd like to be. What's your context, as Gabe was saying? That's one of the most important soil health principles. And you'll see the link in the chat to learn more about Northern Plains. Our members are get up-to-date information on what's happening at the legislative session, training in grassroots community organizing, and more difficult to articulate, but an extremely supportive community of folks who are growing our relationship with one another. And NRCS has got lots of stuff going on. Montana Association of Conservation Districts, and Maddie Larson and Connie really doing great stuff on that. Keela is a great resource, and Bob Quinn and his new Quinn Institute is going to be fantastic. Robin Kelson in Abundant Montana. And just getting started, but I need to stop. There are so many resources becoming available and so many people who want to talk with you about what their successes are, whether you are long-term soil regenerative practitioner or new to it. People love talking about this. It's exciting. You listen to Bob and Gabe talk about their experiences when they made the shift to recognizing that the living soil is where the action is, and it's not killing soil, it's helping it live and thrive. That makes the difference. The whole consciousness changes. And so thanks again for being here as a kind of a long sit, and we really appreciate it. And so participate the rest of the week in other events going on in your local areas. Here in Helena, we have a movie showing tomorrow evening at the library on Common Ground. It's a follow-up of Kiss the Ground. We'll have a lot of conversation around that. And then tomorrow at noon, we're doing an event at the Capitol to encourage our legislators to be involved, actively involved in soil health as we move forward. So, yeah, there are other events coming up. Montana, let's see, the Master Gardener.
That's right, John.
Symposium. That's enough. You're going to shut me off? Give me the.
No, I just said that's right, John. This is a kickoff. So we want to thank our speakers, our participants, just our agricultural communities across the state for supporting rural prosperity and Montana way of life. So yeah, just raise a glass for soil health and our farmers and ranchers, and have a good night, everyone. We'll be sure to share out resources and contact information. Any last words, John? Good night,
my dyslexia first read raise a glass of soil health, not for soil health. So I don't know if that was a Slake test or what that was supposed to be, but yeah, a glass of biology.
All right.
Thank you,
care.
everyone.
Good night.
Thanks so much.
Good night. Thank you.